What's up again, my friends? How's it going today? Where do I start? I don't really, I've been trying to gather my thoughts today. Figure out exactly what I want to do here in life. When I grow up, when I'm a big boy. And I'm kind of stuck between switching modes from my kratom business. It's like for a year, I finally got things going, I invested a little more, and then boom, this whole kratom ban thing happens. Threw a loop in all the payment processors and different methods, and of course it's still for sale on the site. I'm only accepting checks, so it makes it really hard. So I'm on the fence about whether or not this is, even if it stays legal, whether I even want to be a vendor. Now, one of the things that I don't like doing is being a retail salesperson of anything. I just have never been very good with business. I'm not good at paperwork. I'm not good at organization when it comes to the requirements legally to run a business. I basically just, have piles of papers that I might one day end up going through. And I'm very organized in some ways. I mean, looking around, of course, in my office I've got everything in its little area and compartment. But when it comes to not just paperwork, but mind work, like thoughts, it just gets to be chaos. But it's more than that. It's like when you have your own business. I've talked to so many people who say they wish they could work for themselves. And back when I was a carpenter, I worked as a roofer for a couple of years. Then I worked building additions and houses. Did foundations, walls, flooring, insulation, you name it. I could build a house from the ground up. Of course, I'd need a little bit of refresher, but I really enjoyed carpentry. And one day I realized that I wasn't getting paid shit for what I was doing. I was just making the carpenter wages. Even then, it was like $15 an hour or something. And I was like, I want to work for myself. I want my own business. So I was determined. It actually started one day when a couple of my friends had said that 3 of my friends made a bet. And they said that they all wanted to get their contractor's license to be a contractor. And they said that the first person to do it, the other 2 have to give them like 8 hours of free labor or a day of free labor or something. Kind of an incentive. And when I heard about it, I wasn't there when they said that, but I was like, I want to do that too. It's something, and I decided I'm just going to use that as my initiative to go down and I got caramel in my beard, I just realized. I made this big batch of ganja caramels earlier. And I remember I reached up to my beard. Delicious. They're cooling. So, anyway. Where was I now? I decided I was going to get my contractor's license, and I just went down and I did it. I set myself up. I got the book. I paid for a course. It was $150 or something. It was like a home course. Studied for like 2 weeks. And then I went and I took the test, passed the test, got my license, got insured, bonded, and all that stuff. And I'd put in like, a few grand into starting a business. And finally, there I was, working for myself. And it's like, okay, now what? Well, now you've got to get shit done, do paperwork. Either have a secretary or else you've got to work your ass off all day and then come home and do the paperwork. Then you got to remember which customers you have to call back, which clients you need to do an estimate on. And then meanwhile you have people trying to lowball you and trying to give everybody a deal and at the same time make a living. I'm not a shrewd businessman. Let's just put it that way. On one hand, I respect people that are really good and organized and they can do good business, but only if that business is done truthfully and honestly. And I feel like a lot of us get left behind in today's world when we try to do things the right way. The kratom business was another example. It's like, when I was a carpenter, I learned that many carpenters would cut corners, so I made sure that I always had the best products. I always used the best wood, the best quality, spent extra time to make sure it was done right, even if it was out of my pocket. And that's a very noble trait that I would see in other carpenters that I wanted to share, and I wanted to have that. I wanted to know that the work that I did was the best I could do. And I feel, I guess, proud of that fact that I did, and I do. But at the same time, realized that I lost potential income because of it. So it comes down to money versus values. And then you start to ask, well, of course values supersede money. But are my values overly critical of myself? Am I being overly ambitious about not being ambitious? Am I using good values and morals as an excuse to not have to get my hands dirty? And when the Kratom business started, I had the same thing going for the last 6 months. It was like, I to this day, I still get requests at least every week from somebody with a name that's obviously an Indonesian type name. And they ask a friend request me on Facebook. And then I have to go and click on them and see if they're a Kratom vendor. And most of the time they are. The minute I accept their friend request, they're posting all this bullshit about $50 kilos on my websites, on my page. The Kratom vendors in Indonesia have just become overwhelmingly bold in the last year. And so here I am paying a couple $100 a kilo, and then I've got people offering me kilos for a quarter of the price. Do I take it and pass that on to my customers and then make a huge profit, but know it's not the best quality? No. And one could say, well, how do you know it's not good quality? Well, I ordered 2 of them from different vendors, and I ordered a kilo here and a kilo there. I think I got 3 from 3 different vendors. And one guy sent me like a quarter kilo of each. I talked him into breaking it down into like 4 different kinds. And several interesting looking strains. One guy even had sent some stuff that they said, oh, well, we make a blend. We add a little bit of cinnamon to it. I'm like, people don't want that in their Kratom. But you know, whatever, that's what their signature blend was. Anyhow, I had to wade through all these different people and businesses trying to find a product that was as good as the product that I'm used to. And meanwhile, I'll have people saying, oh, you charge too much. Or, you know, I've seen a couple comments where people are like, oh, you know, that guy's just ripping you off. His Kratom's too expensive. Where I'm knowing that I could get it cheaper and sell it cheaper. But I don't want to sell cheap Kratom. So I have to bite my tongue and say, well, I'm doing the best I can. It's kind of the same way when I was a carpenter, when I would give them a killer deal, and I would put in extra time, and they would still be, sometimes there would be a customer who's just always suspicious about stuff like, well, is this done completely, or can I, you know, I had never been questioned on my hours. I guess that's one good thing. I would actually usually get paid more. I worked for this guy for like 2 years. He was a designer in the West Hills, and I remodeled his house. It was a historic home up in the West Hills, and on Montgomery Drive. It took me about 2 years to do this house. I was like the only carpenter really doing the main finish work, and it was just, the crown molding was like 7 different pieces, and it was all experimental. He'd have me hold up different pieces and different designs and mock up designs until he found exactly what he wanted, and I felt grateful to be working for him that whole time. Here I was working for myself, and I get a job with this guy that allows me to work for 2 damn years with him, paying me $40 an hour. And I was pleased to be at that rate. I mean, I could have charged more, or I could have charged less, but that's fair for what I was doing. And after we were done with his house, we went over and we did another house. Can't remember the guy's names now. Because the guy I worked for, the designer, he was gay, and so he was in the whole gay community here in Portland. He knew, like, there was like a gay, I don't know what it was, like a group that would meet, and so he would tell them, oh, my carpenter, he's totally cool, and you know, he's not judgmental towards gays, which I can imagine some gay guys might be reluctant to hire a carpenter. Anyhow, I ended up working for them, and then Ed and Terry, who are a couple of other older guys that lived down the street, we did their entire kitchen. And then another, a family that were friends with them through work or something, that we remodeled their kitchen. I was able to build all the cabinets for these houses. I would put them in myself, I installed them, but I also built the cabinets from scratch, meaning that I went and bought every single piece of oak facing with rough cut boards, ran them through the planer, across the jointer, down the table saw, cut every single face, and then every single cabinet had inset drawers. Kind of like this one over here. This was one of the ones I made for the guy, and it has these like self-closing drawers that pull themselves shut. this is an example of the kind of stuff that I took a lot of pride in, and I dropped it off at his house, and the next day I came and he'd stained it himself. Tried to do it all in one run. We have a $1,000 desk, and he tries to stain it in the dark in one run when he doesn't even know how to stain. Screwed the whole thing up, made it too dark, and then he just gave it to me because he didn't want to deal with it. But anyway, that's for another time. My experience with carpentry was great because I took a lot of pride in what I did, and at the same time, I wasn't really making a whole lot in the end. I would end up shorting myself. And I end up doing that a lot in life. It's hard to organize. It's really hard for me to organize paperwork, but it's also, I yearn for the simple life. But there's no such thing. You can live on a farm, and people think that's a simple life. That's the escape a lot of people want. The one I always wanted was to own my own farm and be able to farm my own food, but that's a lot of work, and that's a lot of research, and it's also you're still having to pay land use taxes or property taxes. There's no real escape from this system that we're within. And it's like you have to play the game or get left behind. It's kind of a drag. I don't want to be part of it, but I have to be. And that's life. What do you do? I was walking in the house earlier. I picked my son up at school, and I looked over by the garage door, and one of my cats was sitting there, just sleeping. And then as I passed her, I passed this plant that's in front of my house with the spider web, and the spider had a little meal in there. And it was all at once this spider, meal, plant, cat, this connection, this realization of the interconnectedness. You might call it a very light Satori experience. And I thought about that a little bit. I thought, I don't get those as often as I once did. When I was studying Eastern mythology and Buddhism, Zen, things like that, I actually had a lot of really intense realizations and experiences, epiphanies we call them in the West. But it was, I guess epiphany doesn't really do it justice, because an epiphany is almost like you're realizing something really important, but it can usually be defined, whereas a satori would be more like just an unexplainable realization. But I don't know, it's different for everybody. The point being that I find the times in my life when I have the most intense enjoyment and when I'm doing the best and feeling the best. And I try to amplify that lifestyle, that way of thinking. Generally, the only thing that holds me back is myself. My own choice to do or not do things, or my own over-ambition or lack of ambition, whatever it may be. Something about people who are seekers, who are also intense people, it's almost like it has to go hand in hand. Like anybody who is I've met who is the kind of person who is really a searching yearner, and I'm not talking about for knowledge, because I'm not seeking anything in particular. I'm not looking for answers. There was a time when I was younger where I was looking for the truth, or what you might call the truth. And that was only until I learned that you have to live the truth. The ultimate truth to me is living happily, with those around you happy, and doing things that make you happy, and learning experiences, and working hard to help others. Those are the very basic, it's the basic premise of what it means to be successful. Somebody tried to define success, and I'll always say the same thing, Success is happiness. And for some people, success, they say it's when they're doing something they like, and I say that's happiness. And for some people, success is money, and if that makes you happy, then that's happiness. But the ultimate goal of success is to be a happy person, but not a fake happiness. It has to be done properly. It has to be built properly. I don't know. Life's weird, right? I try to keep a smile, but I'm still, I'm like everybody else. I have my moments, get frustrated, not so much as I used to. I guess I've learned to really curb the frustrations. If I do get frustrated, it's usually because of something stupid, like I have too much in my hands and I'm dropping stuff and trying to pick something up and then I hit my head and I'm like, ugh. It's my own doing that makes me frustrated. So, which could be my own undoing if I'm not careful. So I have to be a little bit slower in the way I go about things sometimes. And, just try to be human. Anyway, enough rambling. I'll talk to y'all later. Have a good one.